Firstly, welcome to the podcast, and how are you all?
Yeah, well, good, thanks.
Good.
Good to have you here.
Thank you. For people who don't know who you are, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Scott Snowden. I'm the Head of Systems and Software at Lotus Cars in the UK.
I'm Oliver Grange, Principal Engineer for Vehicle Motion Control and ADAS.
I'm Matt Guy. I'm a Functional Safety and Systems Engineer at Lotus Cars UK.
We'll delve into the Evija shortly, but before we do so, let's forget work, forget this beautiful car behind us. Who are you outside of work?
Well, I mean, I suppose one of the main reasons that I'm here at Lotus at the end of the day is my kind of interest in cars.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple of kind of projects at home in the garage, IML2 and a motorbike. It's kind of funny though, because when you then work with cars all day long, it's a little bit hard to go home and kind of get back into fixing another car.
Yeah, so neither of them work.
Yeah, so they're both project cars. And then recently I've just had a baby, 14-month-old. So yeah, thanks. So it's been really nice, kind of spending a bit more time with the family and watching him grow up.
Amazing.
Yeah, and then I mean, I'm really into kind of tech, so sort of home automation and AI has been really interesting to get into. Starting to work on a bit of kind of AI application development and kind of see where that can take us. So yeah, it's kind of me.
Yep. For me, personal life is music. A lot of that. Pretty big into it. Have been for years. Always been quite a strong hobby. Come from sort of a music-focused family. Dad's a musician, things like that. So, always appreciated that, gigs, all that type of thing. Travel quite a lot for it. Cycling, love mountain biking. Nice bit of exercise, things like that. Tend to get out quite a lot. And techie world brings me into the car world, especially EVs, things like that. So automation, developed quite a lot of technology around that.
Pattern here.
Looking at sort of energy management and things like that. Slightly geeky, but for me, I'm quite interested in it, and there's a lot of the sort of industry to explore, things like that. So and cars. Love cars. A lot of my career has been sort of motorsport focused, and for me, owning various different cars over the years, had a E92 M3 and various others. And sort of when I was much younger, started in sort of the Jap scene, loved Civics and 200 SXs and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I can relate to that. I went from Jap and then I've got the Beamer and I've not looked back. So which is a bad thing.
It's the classical trend.
Oh, guess what?
Brilliant. And yourself?
Yeah, so same as the other two, mega into cars. It's what obviously brought me to Lotus, and I have the same issue as Scott. I spend all week, working on Lotuses, doing engineering, like fixing issues with the cars, and then go home and have to fix issues with my own cars because I've got a turbo MX-5 and 6-cylinder BMW. But yeah, no, outside of cars and stuff, I'm similar to Ollie. I'm also big into music and audio. And yeah, I'm also a massive nerd, into my video games and stuff. But yeah, I'm originally from Dorset, so I spend a lot of time commuting, and that's when I get to spend a lot of time in my cars and really enjoy them. Love going to like Wales and stuff, and just doing some good driving. So
amazing, brilliant. Obviously, we're going to focus shortly onto the Evija. But what we'll do, we'll go through the careers that have actually led you into this. So we'll start with yourself, Scott. Do you want to provide a breakdown of where you started, how you got into the industry, and ultimately your career journey to get to this point?
Yeah, so I mean, it wasn't in a way kind of planned out and that straightforward. So I was always, when I was younger at school, I was really into computers. And I guess kind of when I was around 16, sort of started developing websites. That was kind of a big time for the internet, really. It was Ask Jeeves and Yahoo and MSN Messenger. So not everybody had a website. I kind of started developing a website for like my friend's business, and kind of really learned software development and programming at home.
Yes, okay.
And then studied computer science at the UEA in Norwich, and worked as a web developer for a couple of years. So that really kind of gave me my background in software.
Okay.
I then, realised I was into cars, I think,
Yeah,
and started getting more and more interested in cars. And it's like, well, I kind of couldn't see at the time. It's like, how can maybe I want to work with cars,
Okay.
but I couldn't imagine that how doing what I did and sort of developing websites, but even sort of software, it was like, well, what's software got to do with cars?
Yeah.
In the position I was in and where I was sort of coming from at the time. Turns out I was wrong. Then I sort of thought, well, I'm going to need to retrain maybe, or sort of look to how to pivot this more towards engineering. And so I looked up courses, masters basically. I came across one at Brighton, so automotive electronic engineering. That kind of looked like it ticked all the boxes. It was this like 50-50 kind of complete span from the software world into the automotive and a little bit mechanical engineering and thermal world as well. So and it was really good, fantastic course that covered that real interface between the software world and the hardware world, and that for me is what I really enjoy. Is I can develop a bit of software that makes something move, So kind of took that course, and then coming out of that, turned out that there was quite a need for people who had those skills. So had a couple of offers. One of them was this sort of odd-sounding company that was doing this mad thing, trying to develop a liquid nitrogen-powered engine. They called it an air engine, and I thought, well, is that ever going to work? I don't know, but kind of spoke to the guys there, and they were serious, and took on a job as a graduate engineer. That was Dearman Engine Company at the time. And so at my time there, the first thing we did, we moved into a lab that was about the size of this, and was completely empty, didn't have anything in it. We didn't have an engine, we didn't have a control system. So I developed and designed all the lab, so the test cell basically. And then while we were mechanically engineering the engine, and then I developed the engine control system and sort of spec'd all of that. And when we had that developed in Simulink, so I was using LabVIEW and Simulink. Put that on the engine, got it running. That was a really interesting project. Had like variable valve train. We were working with liquid nitrogen, high pressure gases. We were injecting water into the cylinder, which was just a mad thing to do. One day the engine would run, the next day you'd hydraulic it and like have to completely rebuild it. So I'd be there. Well, I haven't got anything else to do. The engine's broken, so I'll rebuild the engine. With the guys. Learned a huge amount doing all of that, because I was the only control engineer, I was the only software engineer. There was 5 other people in the company. We all did everything. And that, for me, turned out to be a really good choice in a way, to take that risk. Because I didn't know, we didn't know if the company was going to be there in 6 months' time. It was true R&D. We made it work. The engine worked. The product worked. We developed it into applications. We deployed it. What was sort of good about the technology was that it offered a really good solution where you needed power and cooling, and it was 0 emissions. So we started literally with a tank of liquid nitrogen, minus 170, no, 96 is it? Yeah, degrees C, and then we used that for cooling, and then we injected it into the engine. That expands 700 times, and that's how you make your power. But we used it for transport refrigeration, so it was like, it was a complicated fridge, basically. But yeah, a lot of fun. Was there for 5 years, and we put that. We also did a hybrid bus as well with that system. So yeah, a lot of development. We grew quite a bit. Grew into a big facility. Set up multiple test cells. Actually, Ollie joined us there, and we worked together on that. So yeah, that was kind of where I learned a lot of what really control systems was and solving some of those problems.
Transitioning from, because there will be a lot of people in a similar situation where they might be sat in dev or web dev, thinking, oh, I'd love to get into more of the engineering, ideally the automotive sector. What was the transition like? So obviously you've done the course, but the actual principles of coding and then coming in and writing simulate models, how much of a synergy is there?
Well, I mean, it was a bit of a revelation, to be honest, going from text-based programming languages. So I was writing PHP, HTML, CSS, and then you come across this Simulink thing, and it's like, what is this? It's a load of blocks on a page. It's like drawing a flowchart, and it's like, how do I get my head? Like, I don't understand how to. I'm used to writing code that goes this line, and now I've got to draw blocks. But then after, and it's sort of similar with LabVIEW actually. After doing it for a little bit, you're like, actually, this is the way. This is good. I like this, and it's quite, in a way, quite hard to then go back to sort of text-based languages. But I suppose the thing that was that now, having come a little bit further along in my career, is most noticeable, is that you sometimes think, well, I did that thing, and maybe that was the wrong direction. But actually, 10 years later, now what I'm doing with software management and with continuous integration and continuous deployment, setting up pipelines around software, even sort of test-driven development, requirements management, all of that. All that stuff I was doing in the web world is actually was ahead of what we were doing in automotive at the time. So we've applied a lot of that learning now into automotive, and that's bringing along and speeding up our software delivery processes and velocity and turnaround. So actually, turns out that those things that you did 10 years ago, they come back and you can they're really valuable. So
Damon into
so then Dearman wasn't really automotive, so I hadn't really kind of gone where I was aiming in a way. My favourite car was the McLaren F1 since being a kid, really. So I always really kind of had this dream that, well, maybe one day I could work with cars like that. Or
a bit of a spoiler there. Would that be
So that was kind of something that I wanted to do, and I was a job opportunity came up at McLaren Applied Technologies, it was at the time, in the kind of motorsport controls team. So as an application engineer, when we were developing the main control unit used in Formula One. So it's a standard control unit across all the cars on the grid. So McLaren supply that control unit, and they supply the base software that runs on that control unit. That's the TAG 320. At the time, it was the TAG 320. When I was there, we then developed the TAG 320B. So that was an evolution, and now I think there might be another one beyond that. Again, that was a lot of Simulink development. I did a bit in F1, a bit in NASCAR, IndyCar, and Formula E. I kind of set up a lot of, while we were developing the TAG 320B, we needed to do a lot of testing, obviously. And so I set up the automated test framework around that. And so that really sort of showed me the power of automated testing, but it also showed the team and how valuable it could be, because we could run we could rerun everything 10 times a day if we wanted. You know, every software build we just had automatically run all the tests. And you know, that's one of the things, one of the principles that we've applied here is kind of automation first, because it really pays off. Kind of progressed quite nicely. The last thing I did there was actually leading that team. But then I guess the next thing really was I wanted to move back to Norfolk. So growing up in Norfolk, being from Norfolk, Lotus was kind of always on the doorstep, and you know, I really like the principles of Lotus and Chapman, with lightness and simplicity. So you know, I like simple things, really simple solutions to complex problems. I really enjoy that, and I suppose that's a little bit of an ethos kind of with everything, and the same with Lotus is it. And with software, it's quite easy to get quite complex. I like it when people say, "Oh, can't we do that mechanically?" It's like, yeah, great. I don't need software if we can come up with a simple mechanical solution. Lotus was a bit of a dream as well, and a role came up at a good point in time. Really, it was when we'd just been bought by Geely, and at that point it was a electrical team lead role. So that was to come and essentially lead the electrical development of the Emira product. So that was all of the electrical architecture, and kind of coordinating all of the inputs for that. So that was a really good opportunity. It was kind of a good time to join, and it was a really nice, you know, fantastic product to work on. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into Lotus.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, Lotus progressing, and you went from electrical. Do you want to talk through the progression journey you've been on?
Yeah, so I think you know, that was a good role because I was pretty exposed in the business, which has its pros and cons. You know, when you're responsible for the delivery of the whole electrical system, you need to make sure that you're going to deliver it. But that then kind of allowed me to progress, and I think my next role was then as a senior manager in, I took on ADAS and software management. So at the time it was again another step where it's like, oh well, this is different, and I hadn't really done the software management aspect of it specifically, but that's where that learning from before then came in, and from the sort of the web world, and applying all of those things, and applying those processes around how we develop and deliver quality software, how we follow the V model, and moving towards sort of A-Spice delivery model as well. Then I was able to take on a role as a chief engineer, again in that role, but obviously starting to take a bit more responsibility for the complete delivery of all of those things, and managing, again, all of this time sort of starting to manage slightly bigger teams, more departments, more responsibility, and kind of broader scope. I was taking on the kind of ADAS team with Paolo Foglino, and software management. So I was responsible for all of the software that was coming into the vehicle. So making sure that the timing of that worked, and aligning that with the program, that it was up to the right quality level, that it had been tested, and then deploying it into production. And then when we took on the Evija project, it was clear that we needed some capability in model-based software development. So then I set up a team there, and that was kind of where these guys came in, and that was for delivering really specifically the Evija software in one of the control modules. That mainly covered charging, thermal control, sort of functional safety, working mode management, those sorts of things. But then also we worked with our suppliers on the delivery of the rest of the software in the vehicle, and we undertook all of the integration of the main controller in the vehicle, so all the body control and all the torque control, and the vehicle motion control aspects of that. Yeah. So, yeah,
Thank you very much for the
that's
insight.
me.
So for me, a different journey. My school time was sort of a different experience. I think for me personally, it was a different way to learn, and I think that was a bit of a challenge for me. So my journey through school, I enjoyed being there and kind of seeing friends and sort of learning things in specific areas, sort of design, technology, science, things like that. But I think for me, it was a time in my life that was, quite fundamental and very different to sort of the way that I live life now. So I think for me, sort of taking steps through my career and looking at it holistically, it does highlight some aspects that other people may be sort of struggling with, or maybe not realising that there are sort of other opportunities and other ventures for you once you do leave school. And it is crucial to learn those skills. So yeah, for me through school, kind of moved away from that, went to college. I started a sort of level 3 diploma in motorsport. The course itself, loved it, really interesting, really engaging, and it really started to draw me in. Throughout a lot of my childhood, I've always loved cars, Lotus being one of the cars, that even my grandparents used to speak to me about, and sort of sow the seed there. And I think for me, taking those steps through college and sort of engaging and embracing that period, again, the sort of learning aspect was a bit of a challenge, but I managed to get enough out of that to sort of start making some good decisions throughout my sort of life journey. And again, like Scott, didn't really know what I wanted to do. It was one of those things that as a child, if you have that sort of level of engagement and you know exactly what you're after, maybe it's through your parents giving you that direction or something just clicks, fantastic. But for a lot of people in this world, that's not quite the case. So with college, got through the course, enjoyed that, and learnt a lot. And I think that's what started to kick off a fairly heavy appreciation for cars, technically. A couple of friends years ago, sort of working through college together, started to get driving licenses. You pick up your first car. For me, a Honda Civic, and the other two sort of similar Japanese cars. And we'd work through, modifying the cars and learning about them and that type thing.
It's always that
And
Civic,
I know, it's crazy. Yeah, and at the time they were great cars, cheap to insure, and lots of opportunity to put larger engines and stuff in, which we did. A bit silly at points, but it was really good fun. And actually, I think that step for us was a clear, sort of path that we all wanted to go down. So, we started playing with cars. We were modifying cars in such a way that, swapping engines out, putting new ECUs in, even making our own ECUs at that point was sort of Speeduino, so like an Arduino format, sort of playing around with our own logic, and taking that as a kind of a hobby. We would be swapping people's engines over weekends, harnesses and everything like that on my friend's gravel driveway. Trying to pull an engine out on an engine crane was never particularly fun, but it was, an experience in itself. And through that had learned quite a lot about the technical requirements of making those changes. And sort of in parallel to that, had a job in a phone shop and sort of learnt to communicate with people and, have respect for people and listen to their requirements and things like that. So took, that sort of period of my life, lots of fun in cars. We were building drift cars, we were, having track days and Civics and things like that, and that sort of went on for a couple of years. And then for me, I took a bit of a sidestep. A good friend of mine, his dad sort of showed an opportunity of working in electrical services, so becoming an electrician essentially. So I sort of went down that path. Still loads of cars around me, all the friends had cars, all that type of thing, but really got engaged in that and spent a lot of time really trying to learn as much as I could through that journey. So a few of my friends got jobs over sort of summer period. They're sort of working in motorsport. A company in Long Stratton called Accelerate Motorsport, sort of working through that. They were in Snetterton, so just down the road from Hethel, and I went to go and see them. Throughout the weekend, had a couple of issues with cars, gave a couple of ideas, things like that, and actually one of them were successful, got the car running again. I think that I got back to the boss and had a bit of a conversation about working for the team and things like that, and at the time wasn't really for me. I had enough stuff going on in life with sort of multiple jobs and various things. So for me, very interested, but sort of stepped away from it. Turned out that was something that came up again in conversation, and at that point, seemed like the right time to sort of get involved. So started supporting weekends, test days, things like that, in Mini Challenge. We did quite a lot of touring, as you can imagine, in motorsport, a lot of moving around UK at that point. We were putting cars into Mini Challenge and production touring cars. So yeah, things were quite busy. For me, sort of working as early level sort of technician into an engineer job was brilliant. It gave me that kind of connection technically, and being around all of those people that had so much motivation to sort of be part of that journey. That pressure, that life, that lifestyle is quite an interesting one, and there aren't many that cross over with that for sure. I had sort of worked there for a few years. Along that path, I sort of started to do some other bits, meet some new people in some other sort of small series, sort of race series throughout that point. That was a great experience, and I think for me, complete transition into a race weekend. The communication styles were completely opposite to each other. The pace of that work was completely different, and also the people you're interfacing with. You're starting to get connections with celebs and people on race days. It was great fun. So a great point, and I think for anyone trying to get into the automotive world, actually motorsport, if you've got that keen interest and you've got some abilities that do kind of support that. That discussion and that approach to engineering is, it's a viable step, and it's absolutely possible to take.
Even just the culture setting, ultimately how they get things done, and it doesn't matter what discipline, right? It doesn't. If you apply the motorsport principles and obviously adapt it to the automotive scene mode, it's always a great grounding.
Absolutely, and they are different worlds, but I think if you pay attention to that and you have the ability to sort of adapt to that, it's where you can make that work for sure.
I think particularly in smaller companies and start-up companies, it's that team spirit and pulling together to get there and get the job done and win the business, make it work, whatever it is. That's really key, and that's sort of the culture that we've tried to maintain in the team here, really. So
it's like the silo breaking, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Taking on multiple hats and doing whatever needs to be done, just get it over the line.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So that was sort of 8 or 9 years. I'd worked through various different race series, sort of finished up in world endurance, got into the 24-hour, races, and the complete hunger to go back and do that stuff again, which was great fun and quite the experience, being awake for 40 hours and ruining your week after, but just wanting to go back and do it again. So a lot of good fun. I also lived in Australia for a bit. I worked for kind of a local car garage, sort of looking at more exotic cars, specifically sort of German products. It turned out that the company owner also had a race car, sort of in more a Gentleman's Cup series, Basically a lot of fun. He had a 935 turbo Porsche. No assistance at all from that, no ABS, no power steering, only a brake bias valve. And yeah, Walter was quite a hero driving that thing. So ended up taking on this job and working with him, a couple of other guys in the team, and we were sort of based from the Wanneroo circuit in Western Australia, in Perth. And yeah, we sort of did a little bit of exploring with that, but great time, great fun, met some great people, and as sort of halfway through that, there was also a Ferrari as part of the same race series that had some issues. It was a 430 GT3 that had some issues, gave them some help, and it turned out that the owner of the car wanted to sort of be run by us, so that also happened as well. So then, you know, 2 cars, sort of running those with some sort of other assets around. So really good time, a lot of good fun. And again, you know, being in a different country, different approach to even to hobbies, you know, it was quite an interesting time. So then for me, bit of travelling, came back to the UK. Me and my partner then moved down to London. Had a bit of a tricky time there trying to get work. I found it, you know, quite a stressful time. For me, not going to university, sort of learning these skills through a different route, brought its own pressures. Essentially not having that degree limited me on the, you know, available opportunities. Had some discussions with a couple of the sort of more known UK OEs, and they wouldn't take me on because I didn't have a degree at that point. So it was quite a challenge, and it took around a month to sort of find a good opportunity. It turned out that Dearman was definitely something that stood out. I'm a troubleshooter at heart. For me, I love challenges, technical problems, anything that sort of gets the cogs turning. And for me, you know, even just going to the interview and having that conversation, realising that a startup environment is quite a lot different to, you know, a fully established business. It definitely interested me, and also the sort of stuff that we were talking about at the time. So for me in that business, I sort of started as a lab engineer, sort of electrically biased, but obviously with all the sort of mechanical background and, you know, suspension geometry setups that I used to do and sort of, you know, support in the motorsport world. I brought all that together. I was there 5 years, and as part of that time, got involved with every project that the business ever had. So, like Scott was saying, the integration of the air engine, liquid nitrogen engine, which effectively is like a steam engine but cold rather than hot. Yeah, sort of worked through that. Lots of different applications this single cylinder engine went into. The predominant one was transport refrigeration, and you know, we had this huge tank sort of hanging under the sort of belly of the trailer. We had what we called a skid at the time, so that was, you know, this big frame that had the engine sat within it. We had, because we had to inject glycol into so warm fluid into the engine cylinder, which is a crazy concept in itself. We had to then separate the exhaust gas, so the nitrogen from the cylinder, and that fluid, basically separate them as they pass to the atmosphere. So we then had this large sort of separation tank for allowing a pressure drop to drop the fluid and reuse it, and then the nitrogen would pass through the exhaust. So there were some crazy things going on in that place, and that all fitted within this, you know, sort of enclosure that was, you know, the length of this table. Moved from the lab-based stuff then into electrical systems, so architectures, component selection, working with Scott and another good friend of ours. We had worked through lots of different iterations of this engine and the architecture and component selection and things like that, which obviously we all got really heavily involved with, you know, drawing on big whiteboards and even at that point sketching out options for electrical harness sort of designs and things like that to overcome some problems. Throughout that period, started to get a lot more familiar with that as an approach. So the harness itself was definitely more automotive sort of developed rather than an industrial application. So getting familiar with the type of connectors and the general electrical principles of designing harnesses and things like that. That journey continued. We had projects in a lot of different, we called them field trials. So the whole arrangement of the trailer would then be put on loan to various companies sort of around Europe and in the UK. We would be out supporting those, sort of technically there to troubleshoot and to sort of learn as much as we could from that. And for me, then that gave me the opportunity to sort of start stepping up through the business. So ended up sort of being lead of electrical there, and eventually also taken on the software element as well. Great experience. Again, some people who I met there I'm still in touch with near enough daily. And they're all sort of spread across different industries, across the UK now, and such a great time. So went through that journey. A few of the guys sort of started to move on to other opportunities. I took on a lot more responsibility there, and then took my next move, which was over to Charge Cars. Again, startup. Love the vibe. You're pulling all of these people together that are, as picked from the industry for their specialist areas and their approach to, challenging situations, and also delivering in, a timely fashion. So, walked in the door and immediately seeing all these friendly faces, people wanting to catch up on things and know more about you and where you're from, and effectively learn from each other.
And yourself?
Yeah. So. I guess I'll start with school time, because my career doesn't go back super long like these guys, but I didn't really have an idea what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought, maybe engineering, because it's, I was good at STEM and that's what I enjoyed at school, maths and physics. So I just went to uni and studied maths and physics at dual honours at University of Nottingham. And at the time I wasn't into cars at all. I grew up with my family, every Sunday eating the Sunday roast, watching F1, but couldn't really care less, to be honest, about it. But after I was about 18, 19 and I passed my tests and got my first car, I started to really get it and really start to enjoy driving. And then I thought, maybe I can, turn this passion into my career. So, and on the last year of uni, I started to I contacted my tutor and asked if I could maybe tailor some of my modules, so take some of the engineering modules so that I could, go down that path. Yeah. And they were. My tutor was the course director, so he was more than happy to do it. So I studied fluid dynamics and scientific computing and stuff, and did some MATLAB and stuff, which was really helpful. Then pandemic hit, and basically wasn't able to really get any work experience. Wasn't able to do placement year or summer internship or anything like that. And then it was kind of because I don't really have the degree, how do I get into this field when I don't have experience, don't have a degree? And it was a bit of a challenge. So I started looking at master's courses, and I basically found this really, really good course in automotive engineering at Cranfield University. And I applied for all the big automotive unis like Hertfordshire and all those, but no one would. I pretty much got 5 rejections because I didn't have an engineering degree and people weren't interested. But I got into Cranfield, and the course director was very enthusiastic about taking on someone that's comes from a maths and physics background. He said he'd taken a lot of them before, and he said that they actually usually performed really well. Started that course over the summer. Did lots of preparation before. Did lots of reading books on like automotive control theory, suspension, vehicle dynamics, you know, structures, materials, everything. Because that's what the course was at. It was a really broad, you know, like covers every single aspect of automotive. Yeah, exactly. And pretty quickly in like the first month of doing that reading, I got really interested in control systems, and I thought, like, this might be what I want to do. And I think it was like the second module that we did was in automotive control and simulation. And yeah, I loved it. And I was very tempted to swap to the mechatronics course and really push down that avenue. But I thought, I'm not going to get too excited. You know, for the first time, I'm immersed in an environment that's like my passion, and everything's really interesting. So I'll stick it out on the automotive engineering course and do all the modules rather than specialising straight away. And yeah, the course was a really, really different course to a typical like British undergraduate degree, where you have like 2 or 3 lectures a day, and then lots of free periods, lots of other I don't know, exploring yourself being an adult. But it wasn't like that at all. It was the postgraduate course at Cranfield was it was very intense. It was like 1 week, 9 to 5, 1 module, like you just sat in lectures all day, 9 to 5, and then the next week was like a 1 week coursework where you'd have to do some practical element and demonstrate your learning from the previous week. So, and that was basically run, that it was just module, one after the other until about Feb. And then we did a group design project. The brief for that was really cool. It was basically, you have to design a car with a platform that can accommodate 3 different powertrains.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So it was like hydrogen combustion, full electric and fuel cell EV. And the brief was basically design a platform, so a structure, like electrical architecture, everything that can support those 3. And it was kind of like go wild with like in terms of where you want to develop and what you want to really go deep on. And for me, I basically made a full vehicle model of the car and did lots of like early concepting stuff of like different powertrain sizing, like big motor front axle for big regen and rear motor, and then like range estimation and stuff. And that was like a big foray for me into Simulink, and because I had a lot of experience in MATLAB with scripting from my undergraduate, I picked that up really quickly, and I found I really, really enjoyed it. Then after the group design project, we came to basically a 2-month period where we did our individual like thesis project, and I managed to convince the head of the mechatronics course to allow me to do basically an automotive control project, so control systems, and I was basically working with a company called Doman Fluid Power. So they were a hydraulics company that basically wanted to move into active suspension. So, and fully active suspension, so effectively variable spring rate and variable damping in one component using like spool valves, which was very new, and it felt like quite cutting edge at the time. So that was really cool. And I was basically doing a project that was trying to optimize ride and handling in different scenarios. So, and with like a vision element. So if you have some knowledge of the road ahead, basically doing predictive control. So you see some rough surface coming up or a pothole, then like try to estimate that, like the effects that will have on the car, and then tune the damping and yeah. So that was really interesting project, and I got a lot of. I actually got, even though it was very much simulation, I also they had the actual hardware on a rig, so I did manage to go to the company and basically do that real-time deployment of my code, of my control strategy with like a road input. So that was really good because I was working with like speed goat, rapid prototyping, real-time control systems, and that was some really good industry experience that I got whilst doing my course. at the same time as that, I was also doing a basically electric go-kart conversion project, but it wasn't just an electric go-kart. We basically made the kart torque vectoring capable. So normally every single go-kart is just a completely fixed rear axle. You know, it's not independent. You know, there's no suspension or anything. But what we had was we decided we wanted to have a split rear axle so that we could do torque vectoring. So dual motor setup in a go-kart. And
where is this go-kart?
where is this?
It's not here today, unfortunately.
Yeah, not here today. I did drive it after doing it, and it was, yeah. Anyway, I'll get to that. But yeah, that was a really, really good learning opportunity, because we were basically mimicking HV LV system that you have with a normal EV. Whereas so we had contactors, we had a 60 volt HV battery, which was, for HV safety reasons, we were only going to 60 volts, and then we still had our 12 volt system. So I basically I'd spec'd up and designed all of the electrical system for that. So quantified the size of the LV DC-DC. I chose the battery modules which we got off of a Chrysler Pacifica hybrid from the US. That just for the size, it was the perfect size in terms of weight and performance, because we were basically very similar to this car. We had a lot more power than we could actually deploy. We had a lot more power than weight, so it was very much a case of balancing the weight of the go-kart to get the most out of the motors. So that was really good fun, and that was quite manic and crazy, because it was I was doing it at the same time as my degree, so doing it at the same time as my thesis, and at the same time, the other third big thing I had going in my life was basically my girlfriend's mother. She said, "Oh, you don't have any experience. Let's try and do I want to give you something, a way to really, I don't know, make your mark and stand out basically when you come to apply." So she basically said, "I will let you use my garage, and you can if you because I kept saying about how I want to get a project car and I want to." So basically, I bought an old Japanese Nissan Sunny Coupe B12, and it was 1987, and been off the road for 10 years, and basically restored that in my weekends whilst I was at uni. Which was, those three things all at once was pretty, pretty intense. And it was by far best year of my life, really just fully immersing myself in my passion. And really after working through school and having to be a bit of a slog, work on stuff you're not interested in, it was really amazing. And it made me realise the advice people give you, just work on your passion, and it was all it's true. If you get a job that you like, you never work a day in your life. It's all true. But so on that course, got a real taste of what it's like to work on cars. Really flourished, did really well, and pretty much 3 days after after finishing my course, I started here. I took the first week off to actually go back and finish the go-kart, because the go-kart literally that project ran until it ran over into when I was starting at Lotus. So